What?
Registered commies, not guns.
Oh, he was probably a member of the National Rifle Association. There was a group that helped criminals get guns so they could shoot citizens. It was a public service.
May I say one other thing to you? It was really on my mind. I've been thinking about it quite a lot. I noticed when you was checking in, you had a lovely, pretty little girl with you. She was really lovely. As a matter of fact, she wasn't so little, come to think of it. She was a fairly tall little, well, I mean, taller than little, you know what I mean? But,
Movie of the week.
I know what you're thinking, that violence really isn't my thing, you know, that my idea of violence is like a pink shirt with purple pants, but I have to ask you something. Are you talking to me? I mean, there's nobody else here. I mean, you're talking to me? Who are you talking to?
Is that a line in a Woody Allen movie? You're in the movie. Is he in the scene?
Oh, yeah, it's me and him. I might have a whole new career on my hands, huh?
You mean a career?
So it's Mia Farrow there?
I didn't see him.
What's your line?
Oh, well, okay, I'm there with Woody. You know, I'm at this bar, and it's Woody Allen. Did I mention that?
Yeah, we got it.
And I'm sitting there with Woody, and I turn to him and I go, boy, these pretzels are making me thirsty.
Hey everybody, that's live television for you there. Welcome everybody. This is Fantastic Comics Presents. No, wait a second, it's not Fantastic Comics Presents. We are actually today going to be calling ourselves This Whole Everything. This is our 1002nd episode. Don't bother going to look and find all the other previous ones. You aren't going to. Normally at this time we do a comic book only show. We'll talk a little bit about comics, but basically what today is going to be is a conversation with somebody that has done a documentary on Woody Allen and the whole Dylan Farrow Woody Allen case and situation. And this is going to be, finally you can have you can listen to a conversation about this without being subjected to commercials about boner pills, CBD ointments, and self-help mystery novels. Isn't that great? Why don't we put my screen on? Hi, everybody. I'm Yule. And I own Fantastic Comics in Berkeley, California. You can see it scrolling down the bottom of the screen there. So Fantastic Comics is not just a YouTube channel that talks about comic books from a store owner's point of view. We are actually a store, and you can go to all those things and check us out on social media. It's all Fantastic Comics. I personally like our Instagram account the most. That's what I would recommend going and checking out. So without further ado, let me welcome you to our guest, our co-host for the show, I guess. Rick Worley. Rick, how is it going?
It's going well. I wanted to keep watching Little Rascals. I was enjoying that.
I have a theme song for this show, but it's not in this room, and so I was going to check and see if I could find it, and that's why it shut off. That's my favorite Little Rascals episode. It's the Our Gang Follies. Alfalfa wants to sing opera. He doesn't want to be a crooner anymore. And Spanky says, "You're an idiot." And Alfalfa goes and he makes a nuisance of himself and signs a contract, and then has a dream that he's going to be singing in the streets for his supper, The Barber of Seville, over and over. Then he goes to Spanky's club and he sees the really awesome shtick that they got going on there and is very sad that he can't participate. Then the dream ends, and then he's very happy to croon at the end. My favorite episode.
Spanky put on some elaborate shows in that clubhouse that they had.
They all did. I mean, Darla was totally kicking it, and there's a really great number later on that doesn't have anything to do with the normal Little Rascals. You're kind of like, where did these kids come from?
I had a pug named Spanky growing up.
Spanky. Love Spanky.
Spanky the pug.
The Little Rascals. Another thing that Bill Cosby ruined.
Let's not start on Bill Cosby. That's a whole other.
It's another documentary.
one that I'm not making.
Everybody, this is Rick Worley. Rick, you are a comic book creator, and that's how I knew you, as a customer of the store, someone that creates comic books. And then the first and only time I've had you on the show up until this moment was when you did a Star Wars documentary, and we had you on, and that was one of my most favorite episodes I think we've ever done.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I was ready for it. I had a lot to say. It was something I knew something about. And I was really able to ask you poignant questions. And I think I want to ask you less pointed questions about your documentary. And I don't want to like, oh, well, you answered this, because that it can get boring. And we're going to have people in chat that might have a couple questions that we're going to ask you. So if you have them in the chat, let us know.
You can get as pointed as you want.
Okay. Well, I just don't want to be like, well, what are you going to answer for this? Like it's your your defense team,
Because I've had so many people for so long now trying to like, well, what about this? You don't mention, it's like they think they got you. And at this point, I'm like, kind of like, yeah, let's fight, let's go. Because I've got an answer for everything, So it's kind of just like.
All right. So for those of you that don't know, Rick created his documentary about Woody Allen is called Woody. Oh, by the way, Woody Allen is innocent. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the name of the video. Yeah.
That is the name of the video. So you have a stance that not a lot of people would, number one, agree with, and number two, say in public. And you just put it out there on YouTube for everybody to check out, right?
Well, that's kind of why I made the video, was because there's a lot of people, I know a lot of people that agree with me, that think he's innocent, and they'll say it to you in direct messages. They'll say it to you in private messages, but they won't say it out in public. And I started getting really annoyed with people who don't have a clue what they're talking about, but they're proud to shout their opinions from the rooftops. And then people that know much more about it, but they're afraid to speak, And that really started to drive me crazy. And it's not like I had a big career to ruin or anything. So I just did the video, Mm-hmm. It's kind of the same reason I made the video defending Star Wars prequels, because it's a debate I have so many times with so many people. I just put it in a video. And so instead of having the debate 500 times, it can be like, just go watch the video. I'm not doing this again.
Right.
But
well, and we were talking before the show. You were kind of at the beginning of the arc of the resurgence or the finally acceptance of the prequel movies of Star Wars, possibly because of how the new ones are received. But you were years ago talking about, how influential and important these movies are, not unlike this documentary. Now everybody knows the HBO show that came on and all the podcasts that have come from there. We will be playing clips from some podcasts I've listened to get you, to answer some questions. But you were, again, kind of on the beginning of the arc before all this other stuff has come.
You probably remember me coming into your store like 5-6 years ago and defending the Star when we had Star Wars discussions and defending the prequels and saying
Like, what's
someday
this
I'm
guy
going to make
talking about?
I'm like someday I'm going to make a big video because this is too involved to explain everything. But I'm going to make a big, and I think I said that for years before I posted the video because that's how long I take forever to make things. But I know I told you about that probably 3-4 years ago.
Right. Yeah. And then when we finally had you on the show, we were like, what's up next for you? And you were kind of talking about this. You were also talking about Bob Dylan. Who knows? Maybe that's the next thing.
I've had people suggest I make a Bob Dylan video. That's one possible thing. I'm not sure what my next. I have a couple. I want to do a video that's just ranking my favorite movies from the last decade, just because as much as people seem to like to fight with my videos, they're usually positive videos. I'm usually making videos about things I like. I'm usually saying I like the Star Wars prequels, and yeah, I just wanted to do a video just talking about obscure movies I've seen that I like that I think most people haven't seen.
Awesome.
So I think that would be a fun thing. But,
all right, well, let's not get too deep into it right now, guys. We are going to be talking about some comic books, but first I want to say hello to the chat.
What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
Hello.
What's up?
What's up, everybody? Early on, You Murdered That Guy was saying Woody Allen is his favorite comic book artist. Well, mine too. Jelly Pills in the other room, hello. And Fantinuum, who was here early as always. Let's just hold on a sec. You Murdered That Guy says he just watched an episode of Bob Ross. Tough act to follow. I totally agree. Courtney Holland's here. Hello. Eric D. Awesome. Coffee Junkie. Hello. Coffee Junkie's mom liked the Facebook post about this show, so I'm very interested to see how this plays out. Fizz Chozo here for the first time. Thank you for subscribing to the channel, buddy. This is going to be a little bit of a different type of episode than normal. Fantastic Comics Presents will be back at your regular scheduled time next week. We will talk comics in just a moment, though. Jean-Pierre Leduc, looking forward to this. Awesome. Thomas is here. Rick, do you think Woody's legacy will ever recover?
Do you want to answer that? I'm trying not to bog it down before we get into the.
We'll come back to that hopefully.
We
Although Jean-Pierre Leduc has already answered it, so bestsellers. I don't know if that's necessarily a. At least it got published.
I think about 99.9% of the people that are claiming that they're boycotting Woody Allen are people that haven't actually watched any of his movies in 30 years. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's. I don't think his legacy's dead yet. Mm-hmm. I just didn't want to derail the conversation.
No, it's all right. We have at least one vote for the Bob Dylan video. Sure thing. Well, the thing I like about it is, again, before we get too deep into this, I really feel like your videos enlighten me in a way that I didn't know I could be, on the subject. Maybe this one was I had more of a passing glance, and I didn't know everything. But I lived during it, so I feel like, I was embroiled in it, at least, the scandal aspect of it. The Star Wars one, I thought, working in a comic store and, being a Star Wars guy from back then, and even though I didn't watch these movies up front, I figured I could, have a conversation about it. And even still, you gave me something to think about, and I really like that. Why not a Johnny Depp video? Dude, you want to blow up. But now see, the thing is, Thomas, Rick's at the beginning of the arc. Johnny Depp is now at the end of the arc, and that's not Rick's type of thing, right?
I don't I try to do I don't like to get pinned down, because I do the Star Wars video and then everybody thinks it's a Star Wars channel. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do the Woody Allen video and then become like the the Me Too channel talking about Johnny Depp and all these different stories. The Woody Allen thing was just something that was particularly interesting to me, but it wasn't meant to be the theme of my whole channel,
I understand. That's why this whole everything was the title of the episodes before we just went straight Fantastic Comics, you know, because I wanted to give us an opportunity to be able to have like other kinds of conversations and something that's a little different. And that's what this is. But before we get onto it, let's talk about New Comic Book Day, everybody. There are a few comics that are coming out. DC actually comes out on Tuesdays if your store is open. Just one of those things. I'm going to show you some comics that came out from them and a few that are coming out tomorrow. Wednesday is the New Comic Book Day. That's when you get your Marvel. There's other companies like Dark Horse and Oni and Boom, and those come out on Wednesdays. All right. First up, from AWA, Erratic. This is a superhero story. It was a 5-issue miniseries. Hopefully there'll be more. Every single issue was amazing, and they told you who the character was and added to it each time. All the while, the story didn't seem like you had to read each issue to understand what was going on. You just wanted to. Erratic is written and drawn by Kari Andrews. It's fantastic. Should be one of the best books of the year. Oh, do you want to say anything about Kari Andrews?
No, I'm not going to respond to most of these because I don't read comics that haven't been made before the year 2000.
Before I was born.
I buy a lot of comics, but nothing that's current. So
I don't usually try and bring up the words cancel and culture in the same sentence. But here's a person right here, Jeff Johns, that's on the on the outs of some people's lists. He's a great writer. He's done some TV, done some movies, and he's working with Gary Frank. They are away from DC and now at Image, and this is their 3rd issue of their post-apocalyptic super story called Geiger. Beautiful art.
Is Jeff, you mean because of the Ray Fisher thing? Is that Jeff Johns' problem? Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Jeff Johns' ex-wife, who happens to be black, was like, he ain't a racist. But that's one of those things.
I have thoughts on Zack Snyder, but it's another way to derail the conversation.
Oh, Zack Snyder. Woo, we could talk about some fandom peoples. Magic the Gathering has its own comic book from Boom. This is written by Jed McKay and Iguara. It looks really good, actually, if you like that kind of like American manga style. Part 2 of the, oh Jesus, what's it called? The
Chameleon Conspiracy.
That's it, Chameleon Conspiracy.
Yeah, Chameleon Conspiracy. I am reading Amazing Spider-Man now, but I'm about 680 issues before I catch up to this one. I think I'm like in 1975 right now.
Well, this is a Chameleon story. It has Teresa Parker, Spider-Man, Peter Parker's sister, and stuff is going on. Oh, here's the Mighty Marvel Masterworks, the MMM, I guess. This is the first 10 issues of Spider-Man plus Amazing Spider-Man 15 in one nice digest-sized book. It's going to be cheaper than the more expensive ones, a little bit smaller, but something that I think kids are going to really like. Good stories. Thousands of dollars of comic books in that one little book. X-Men 21, this is the last. I erroneously said that 20 was the last issue. This is the last issue of the Jonathan Hickman run. It's going to be a Hellfire Gala tie-in issue, which all of those issues for this month are this party at the Hellfire Club, and it's fabulous. Who's your favorite X-Men character right now, Rick?
I did start reading the Hickman run, but I stopped about a year ago. So I don't know who's around right now.
Let me know in the chat if you read comic books. If you read X-Men, Hickman's run, or any of the other side stories, who is your favorite character right now?
Is Apocalypse like a part of the team right now or something?
Apocalypse is stuck on that other island after 10 of Swords. So...
Didn't they blow up Krakoa?
No. Krakoa has like a sister or a brother or a mate. Oh. I don't know. It's weird.
See, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Batman the Detective is a 6-issue miniseries. Almost all new comics from Marvel and DC and almost every other company are miniseries or finite or creator-owned finite stories like at Image. This is a 6th issue by Tom Taylor and Andy Kubert. Some of my favorite Andy Kubert of all time. Even though it's not doing a direct a rip of Dark Knight Returns, it feels like Andy Kubert's version of that. And I'm not an artist, and I'm probably talking out my ass right now. But if you looked at it, maybe you tell me you might agree with me. But it's really good. I like it. And last but not least, this week DC had one of their very, very special issues that, the last one they had was an Asian, I don't think it's Pride. It was like an Asian celebration is what it was called. And they should have just called it like Celebration. They could have done that with DC's Pride here also. But anyhow, they'll come out with these like $10 comics, which will have multiple stories featuring all the characters that they're trying to point out. And these happen to be LGBTQ plus characters. Did I get all the letters and things right there?
I think you left out 20 or 30 letters. I'm not sure.
Shit.
I can't.
I forgot 2S, two spirits. Yeah.
I'm more behind the times with gay people than I am with comic books.
It's so funny reading comic books. I am up on the gay people, and that's not even in this one.
You put this last on your list, though. Why is that? Why do you hate gay people so much?
Prominent. Well, it's either first or last. If you are in a wrestling match, you are the main event. It is the last match.
Right. Okay.
Unless you're Hulk Hogan, you want to go home at halftime, and then your last match, the main event was in the middle of the show. I love the gays. What are you talking about? They're my favorite peoples.
Now they're pretty annoying.
Oh, come on. Well, we read X-Men together, and I've always known this to be true. I've always said this, and I can't help it. It's just the way it is.
When I make a joke like that, I have to remember that probably a lot of people don't know that I'm gay. Because I used to think that everybody knew me from the comics, and so I figured that they should know certain things. But
well, before we get into the show, let's take a look at one of the issues. I pulled this off the internet, Google. A Waste of Time. Is this autobiographical?
Yes, it's a true story where I had sex with Bill Watterson.
Well, maybe not the cover as much as maybe some of the feelings or thoughts that come from the characters.
Yeah, it's supposed to be autobiographical, but in a metaphorical way. That's why
Calvin and Hobbes type of way.
Well, yeah, that's why I draw myself as a cartoon character, because it kind of gives me the license to go from autobiography to fantasy whenever I feel like it. So a lot of people think it's just a furry thing. That's why I draw myself as an animal. Wasn't really the point. Didn't occur to me, but that's fine if that's what people want to take away from it.
Do you think, like in hindsight, if Woody Allen would have cast himself as a bunny, he'd be in a lot better position than he is right now?
Woody Allen did have a comic strip. Did you ever see that? The Woody Allen, he had a newspaper comic for 4 or 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I knew that, but I'm shoehorning it right now.
It was pretty terrible, but people forget how famous he was, like in the late 70s, that he had a comic strip based on his humor. There was like the official Woody Allen comic.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, you know what? So I can't say before we get into it any longer. Let's just do this right now. All right, everybody. This is the interview. Rick Worley, everybody. Welcome, Rick. I need to get that applause thing going. Thanks for joining us. I'm really appreciative of that. You said you're reading a lot of old comic books right now.
Yeah, I've been working on an Amazing Spider-Man reread. I'm on issue 181 or something like that.
Oh my God!
I just finished Len Wein's run.
You're getting to my favorite issues ever. This is when I was like reading, like I would pull it off the liquor store spinner rack, and I would get like the first issue of Black Cat. I mean, I know who your person was in comic books, but for me, it was the Black Cat. I just, if not Gwen Stacy, then it definitely was Black Cat. And
I've never read any of the. I've never read the Roger Stern era before, so I'm excited to get to that because I know people really like that, and that's just a gap in my comic book experience.
He's a very solid writer. I recommend reading Peter Parker during that time also. That's where you get a lot of the clone stuff that ultimately becomes the Clone Saga stuff.
Right, the stuff where with Carrion, where it was like a viral thing, right? The clone. Oh, that's because actually, Spectacular Spider-Man, when Sal Buscema was drawing it, like between issue 100 and 200, that was actually the first Spider-Man comics I ever read. I preferred that to Mark Bagley at the time. When I was a little kid, I was into Spectacular with Sal Buscema. That was my jam when I was a little kid. I didn't like Mark Bagley as much. So that's all the stuff I like. All the stuff they were doing with Harry Osborn as the Goblin, and the Vulture was in there, and Tombstone. And
I gotta let you know, Mark, however we're saying his last name, got me out of reading Amazing Spider-Man for quite a long time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it wasn't necessarily everything about him. It was like the stories were like 90s, and they were darker, and they were like stupidly dark. And then his bright kind of sort of happy faces just didn't work with it. And Spider-Man was drawn almost like a teenager in costume. Mm-hmm. And the delineation between faces from like one person to the other was it was indistinguishable, really.
That's Mark Bagley. Mark Bagley. Aunt May looks like Peter in a wig. He's got like the two faces that he draws, but he's a favorite for a lot of people. But I was all about Sal Buscema even as a kid.
Right,
that was better.
Yeah, I'm gonna just put up some people's notations so that they know that I'm thinking of them as they're talking in chat. Oh, this is awesome! We got a lot of people here right now. This is going to be fantastic. Just making sure nobody has anything really serious. Oh, wow. Here's one. Jed McKay from the upcoming Moon Knight is true. Yes. They're going to have a McNiven cover that looks really good. I'm looking forward to the series. I have said that I kind of hope they will play down the Jewishness and the insane personality aspect of the character a little bit more than they have in the last few iterations of the book. Just kind of make it a little bit more mysterious and crime fighty, and then we can get into those other things again later on. I would like that. So you hate gays and Jewish people? And people with mental disorders, obviously. Okay. Also, I'm learning a lot today. I do. I hate them all. Gosh. I know. I should probably get out of here before I'm already. Oh, before I type the fact that we're going to talk about Woody Allen on this show. Yeah. I got to let you know. So through my store account, Fantastic Comics, I'm like, we're going to have Blood of the Land on the show talking about his Woody Allen documentary. And I'm like, that doesn't sound good. And I'm like, maybe I should say it this way. And it's somebody in the chat asked about my Blood of the Land, my Twitter handle being Blood of the Land. And yeah, somebody else said it's a Bob Dylan lyric, which is, if people think that's weird, go listen to the song. What is that the name of the song? No, the song's I Feel a Change Coming On. And if you hear the lyric, I'm not going to derail us anymore, but yeah, that's where it's from. Please do. It's all about you, my friend. No, let's get to the Woody stuff, because I don't want to lose people that came here for. They did come here for that. Because I could talk about Bob Dylan, but that's a whole other, well, how about this? Just before we get into it, what about Bob Dylan is the thing that you really like the most? Oh, come on, that's a huge question. All right, well, how about this? He worked with electric guitar after a while, and that was a thing that wasn't cool to some people. Isn't that correct? Yeah, that was a. I'm just bringing up something that I know. That was a. It's funny, like Bruce Springsteen went acoustic, and then people were pissed off. Mostly the E Street Band, though. Yeah, I don't really know Bruce Springsteen, but I'm trying to not get started on Bob, because that'll be a half an hour answer, and then. That's fine. You know what, guys? We're talking Woody Allen here. Woody Allen. Yeah, Bob is the one that he comes up in my Star Wars video. He comes up in my Woody Allen video, so it's a big thing for me. Okay, so I'm gonna play. So a lot of the clips that I have are from podcasts that happened, and I put some pictures in, so it's not so boring as a blank screen. We're going to talk right now we're going to hear somebody talking about defenders of Woody Allen. So why don't we just go on with that right now?
It's so funny because there are so many defenders of Woody Allen, and he has every right to have those people defending him. Some of them are in his power circle, have relationships with him. Some of them are his fans, and some are just this other contingent of people who just defend him for the sake. It's almost like a game or an exercise. And so they pick apart certain things and yet ignore others. And some of them say that, yes, well, that's standard procedure. Even the FBI destroys their contemporaneous notes of interviews. Is that true, Jim?
No, we do what's called an FD 302, right? And what my practice always was, because I was a prosecutor before I was an agent, was when I did FD 302 to document an interview that I conducted, I made a copy of the final report and my notes, and I put them in the same evidence envelope. And when I testified at trial, I had to turn over my notes. Now, some people might destroy them because they didn't want to have to turn them over. But to me, it's just corroboration of what you put in your report. So it's not a practice that is absolutely done by the FBI.
Well, let me let you know right now, nobody on this show is in Woody Allen's side at all. At all.
You mean in all the clips that you've selected?
Yeah, it's just the way it is. How do you feel being out there on an island in the Woody Allen universe out there in the social media land?
Well, this is what I don't remember if this was what we said before the show started or if I already said this, but that in personal chats and in direct messages, I get so many people that defend Woody Allen, love Woody Allen, now currently tell me that they know that I'm right. I've actually had 3 or 4 really big, I'm not going to name drop so you can believe me or not believe me, but I've had 3 or 4 like A-list directors, like big movie directors, tell me, that we love your video. We know that you're right. We all know that Woody's innocent, but we just can't say it. It's too dangerous to say. And
did you ask for a stipend then at least?
But they'll say that in private messages. It's this climate of fear that the people that are actually informed on this, that actually know all the details, are afraid to speak. And the people that have no idea what they're talking about are yelling their opinion from the rooftops because it's the popular opinion.
Did you hear how demonstrative those people were?
And they're so proud of themselves. I've seen it's this whole subgenre now of articles where people speculate on the reason that people defend Woody Allen, and they have all these reasons. It's about whatever their pet interest is. So it's either they defend Woody Allen because of toxic masculinity, or they defend Woody Allen because of rape culture. They defend, whatever they're interested in. That's the reason that you're defending Woody Allen. It never seems to cross their mind that you might be defending Woody Allen because you looked at the evidence in the case and the evidence seemed to say he was innocent. Like that might be a reason. That reason doesn't seem to. It's always because they're not actually looking at the evidence in individual cases. They're not looking what does the evidence. They're looking at it as a whole socio-political thing of either you believe accusers or you believe victims, or either you support Me Too or you don't support Me Too. They're talking about a social movement. They're not talking about a particular legal case. And so they're like, well, if you don't support Woody Allen, if you do support Woody Allen, that means you're on the, the anti side of Me Too. And so that means that you're this type of misogynist, or you're the, whatever else, or all the names I get called now.
And you are called names right now, right?
Oh yeah. I have people calling the child molester and whatever, because they're not actually, they're not looking at it as, okay, this is a accusation of a crime. So we look at the evidence, we decide, does the evidence support the accusation or not? They're looking at it as this whole cultural thing of either we support women or we support these evil, abusive men. And it's not, their thinking is so muddy. They're thinking on a macro level and applying it to an individual case. You could be, we're sitting here in Berkeley, and I'm a liberal gay guy, and I have no problem supporting allegations that I think are true. I have no problem with that. But you have to look at it on an individual case level. On this individual case, the evidence doesn't support the allegation. Many other cases it does.
Now I gotta let you know, I'm more on your side of the camp of believing Woody Allen in this situation. I don't know all the details, although I've now listened to a bunch of podcasts.
Yeah,
I've watched your video. I've watched the Allen v. Farrow on HBO. I got to tell you, believing a certain way, watching your stuff first, and then watching and listening to all these other things, I can still come out of those thinking, this guy's a fucking piece of shit. You know, it's like, holy cow, they have some things that are, you know, they really paint a specific picture in such a way that even a person that's more inclined to not think that way, I come out thinking, wow, this is hard to defend. Sometimes.
Well, that's a lot of the argument against Woody Allen is this giant whataboutism, right? Because the idea, the thing about the story about what happened in what's alleged to have happened in the attic, the incident that we're actually talking about, whether or not he molested Dylan Farrow on that day, he didn't. I can disprove that in 2 minutes. It's very, very, that's cut and dry. There's a reason that it never went to court, because it didn't happen, and it's been proven it didn't happen. So what they do is they make it this huge thing about, well, what about all this other stuff? What about, you know, he also dated a 17-year-old, and he also, Soon-Yi was Mia's daughter. And, you know, so they make it about all this other stuff. And what they're just trying to do is just paint this general portrait of, oh, isn't he a creep? He's a creepy guy, right? And if you think he's a creepy guy, then why don't you believe us about this other creepy thing? And you know, it's rather than talking about the evidence of the particular allegation, they're going on this sort of broad offensive about his like personality, you know, and the type of movies that he makes and the way that he talks, and, you know, and it's just this huge, they're trying to muddy the waters of these completely unrelated things, you know, of his relationship with Soon-Yi, which is a consensual relationship with a 21-year-old woman. Now, whether or not you approve of his relationship with Soon-Yi, you think that's weird, you think 21 is too young, whatever, you know, you can have whatever opinion you want on that, but it doesn't remotely resemble in any way molesting a 7-year-old in an attic. There's no overlap between a consensual relationship with a 21-year-old and molesting a 7-year-old, you know. But a lot of people, that's as far as they ever get, is the Soon-Yi thing. Like, oh, well, that's creepy. She was 21. I think that's wrong. And so that's it. He's a creep. So if he's a creep on that, then he's a creep on everything. Right. And they're talking about these other things that there's no commonality between that story and Dylan's story of the attic.
Okay, so I got a video. Let me go through these people conversating first. Jim Clement, very disappointed in him. Let me tell you, listening to him on these shows, these podcasts, he has a point of view, and he is not wavering at all. He is an ex-FBI guy. He does Criminal Minds television programs. He's a consultant. He seems like a guy that wants to convict all the time. That's what I got from him. And actually, this clip talking about the attic and the train and Dylan, he's going to come in on that one. So here we go.
I wanted to ask Jim and Laura something that defenders of Woody Allen, or even maybe not defenders of him, but people who they just don't want to believe that this is true for Dylan's sake. And I think that's where I was many, many years ago in 1992 when I first read Maureen Orth's story. I didn't want it to be true, not to defend him, but because I didn't want this to have happened to this 7-year-old girl. It just triggered me greatly. And some of his defenders say, well, you know, why would he do this with everybody around? You know, how could he do this? It's not possible. And also, you know, only for 20 minutes, it's not possible.
That's not true.
It's not, I know it's not true. So go for it. Well, Tell me why they're wrong.
All right. First of all, the layout of the house. You had to go through the master bedroom to get up to the attic area. And so it wasn't a place that anybody normally went to. And in fact, the babysitters that were there did not go up to the attic. did not look for him there because they may not even have been aware that it was there. So that's one thing. So it was a very private area, and there was only one way in and out, so it's easy for him to actually monitor it. It reminds me a lot of Michael Jackson's bedroom, for example.
I was just about to say, and all those other places in Neverland where he had bedrooms, secret bedrooms off of certain rides and different things that were there, and no one knew about those separate bedrooms.
Exactly. And then, you know, in a studio as well. So there's that. And then the 20-minute issue. The vast majority of sexual assaults do not go on for more than 20 minutes. In fact, you can commit a sexual assault in 1 second with one touch. The fact is that the grooming of Dylan that is described by Dylan and by Mia and by the other people that witness things like the maid and various babysitters and friends of the family and other children, all of that is a pattern of behavior. You should understand that for child sex offenders, it's a very psychological thing. It's fantasy-based. That means offenders think about this stuff over and over again. They plan it in advance. And the actual act does not have to be for more than 1 second or 2 seconds or 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be that long. People joke about sexual activity happening very quickly and women being unsatisfied because a guy is very fast. Well, that stuff can happen when an adult sexually assaults a child.
And also, isn't there an adrenaline rush to there's people around, there's risk, but isn't that a rush?
But he's able to manipulate the circumstances. He didn't do it with people around who could catch him. He did have his head in Dylan's lap, and the maid unexpectedly caught him, which is probably why he took Dylan up to the attic, which is why he kept her separate, which is why he kept doing things with her separately to normalize that separation, to give him a window of opportunity. And this may have been the first window of opportunity that he had where the maid and the babysitters were not able to prevent him from taking her off on his own. He was able to do it. It's at least a 20-minute period of time, and he doesn't account for his time ever. Mia asks him over and over again, well, if you just tell me what you were doing for those 20 minutes, then I can rest. I can be at ease. And he says, oh, you'll find out. You'll find out. It'll all come out. Bullshit. It never came out.
But it was
he
innocent.
never explained.
He could just say, we were playing with the train set in the attic.
He could, but he doesn't want to admit being up in that attic because that corroborates her statement. So he doesn't do it. But the fact is, he also lies about that train existing at all. Oh, she never mentioned the train years ago. Bullshit. She did mention the train, which is why the detectives went up and documented it in their report.
Oh, holy Christ. Where do you start with that?
Well, now, what he's talking about, when he's talking about talking with Mia, they're talking about phone calls that they're having.
Yeah.
And I it's easy to explain away how Woody's acting on the phone. He's being coy because he doesn't want to be slandered for anything. I would think, you just don't want to, even if you want to say something to calm someone down, it's not smart to do that when you're in a legal situation, I think.
And when he knows that she's probably taping him and he was probably taping her. And it's all the way that they tried to use those phone conversations in the series was just so stupid. He didn't say anything wrong. All she sets up her tape recorder and gets all ready to tape the phone call and then starts screaming at him. What happened in those 20 minutes? Why won't you tell me what happened? And, they've already talked about this 100 times and he's just going, the truth's going to come out in the trial. He's like, I'm not going to sit here and start breaking down every minute of the day with you over the phone. The truth's going to come out in the trial. And that's all he says. And they somehow try to make that. I don't even understand how they're trying to find something sinister about him saying that. But this guy is, I don't know, this guy that was talking, is he the one that you're talking about that was in the FBI or something?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, he might know a lot about sex. This is what I'm talking about people knowing about the topic in a general term, but they don't know anything about this particular case. Because he might, I don't know who this guy is. He might know a lot about sex crimes in general. He doesn't know a single fucking thing about the story.
Well, now,
am I allowed to say fuck?
Yeah. So this is a podcast talking about the Alan V. Farrow podcast and the miniseries documentary that ran on HBO. So they have all this information as they're talking about it. And
that's what the Alan
they
V. Farrow
believe
thing,
what they believe.
right. And that's what the Alan V. Farrow, that's the reason that the Alan V. Farrow show exists. The number one thing that it does is it allows people that don't know anything about the case, they watch that show and then they're like, well, I watched a 4-hour series. I'm an expert. And they think they're an expert now. They don't know that show very deliberately leaves out 95% of the story. And I've got this since that show came out. I've got people all the time on Twitter, on YouTube, sending me messages and they're like, well, what about blah, blah, blah that I saw in Alan V. Farrow? And they think it's like a gotcha moment. They think they're springing it on me and and I'm like, oh gosh, that blows up my whole story. There's nothing in Alan V. Farrow that didn't already come up in the court transcripts in 1992. The only reason people think it's new is because they didn't know enough about the story to begin with in order to have an opinion on it. That's why it sounds new to them. And the people that made Alan V. Farrow, they know that they're very deliberate about it because they know people read a headline and most people read an article. They're not sitting there reading, 1,000 pages of court transcripts from 1992. They know that. And the whole show plays on that. So people sit through the show and like, oh, I'm an expert now. I watched, it's 4 hours. That's more than I know about most topics, and it's so carefully designed to give you certain things and not give you other things. And this guy, I when he's talking, I could go point by. This is the other thing in Alan V. Farrow is it's hard to debunk Alan V. Farrow because there's so many things that are wrong, and it's like, where do you start? You'd have to make a 16-hour show just to debunk their 4-hour show. Because like when I'm listening to this guy talking, he's just getting every single detail wrong. He's like, oh, the maid saw her head in the lap. It wasn't the maid. It was a babysitter, It's just like every single detail is wrong. And so it's like, how do I start talking back against this guy?
Well, it's easy to get some of those things mixed up, but I think
my point is this is not some of them. It's like everything. So it's like, how do you debunk this? Because you got to start going through word by word because it's every single thing that he says is wrong,
So when I was listening to the audio clips and the shows and everything, Jill came in the room one time and she's like, this guy's really fixated on this train. Can you tell me a little bit about this? So just for the people out there to know, the court case that Woody Allen, it had nothing to do with Dylan as far as their sexual situation. It had to do with him wanting to adopt or to gain possession of them, right? In a messy separation with Mia Farrow.
Yeah, it was not a trial; it was a custody hearing, and all it was about who should get custody.
So a lot of people think, oh, it must be a Soon-Yi thing, or it must be the Dylan Farrow thing, but it's not. It's just he wanted, Yeah,
it was nothing about any. They talked about all that because, of course, the point was his relationship with the kids, and actually, the end result of the judge in the trial made no secret that he was very anti-Woody because he didn't approve of Woody dating Soon-Yi, and he was pretty much from day one. He was saying that he's did I just say trial? I mean to say hearing.
We got it. These words.
Somebody else is going to take these quotes and be like, this guy gets every single detail wrong. He has no idea what he's talking. So yeah, I understand how a slip of the tongue can make a small mistake. But the point is that even with this, the judge's issue was that Woody was dating Soon-Yi, and he just didn't think Woody should have custody of the other kids because they were technically siblings or half siblings to the person that Woody was dating. And the judge made it clear, like from day one, he was never going to get past that. But even this judge that was so anti-Woody, in the end, he didn't rule out that Woody could have custody. He gave Woody supervised visits with Ronan. He said that they would reevaluate his custody of Dylan. The judge never said that Woody couldn't have custody, which you would think if this judge was deciding, oh yeah, Woody is totally molesting all these kids, you would think the judge wouldn't be like, okay, you can have supervised visits,
It smacks of Mitch McConnell after January 6th. Kind of like, well, he didn't really do anything, but it's very upsetting that he said what he said.
Well, it was just a little bit of molesting. I mean, maybe he could molest him on Saturdays,
Hell.
So Do you want to go into the train thing? Was that where you're asking?
We will in just a moment. Let's go to You Murdered That Guy saying, Rick, you're not on an island. I don't know any of these people, but they've gone on record for defending, as has Alec Baldwin.
That's true.
And
too.
Scarlett Johansson,
Yeah,
but not
a list of
not Drew Barrymore. She's done with him.
Yeah, Drew Barrymore. I got gaslit.
He wouldn't direct Santa Clarita Diet.
You'll notice that the list of people who say that they'll never work with Woody Allen again overlaps quite a bit with the list of people who have never been asked to work with Woody Allen again.
I'm very happy to see everybody's favorite movies. Just to let you know, also.
What's Up, Tiger Lily? That's a choice.
Yeah. Rick, have you any insight on why people are fascinated with the lives of celebrities? What does it say about us that we're talking about this?
I think that's what this whole thing is that people on Twitter or whatever, they get a real power trip out of, I'm just some guy on Twitter, and look at, I'm canceling a big celebrity. And they're like, wow, look what I just did. And they even trick themselves into thinking that they're somehow, being a little hero because like, oh boy, I got whatever Kimmy Schmidt is, people are saying she's a white supremacist now because I made a stupid tweet.
I know, yeah.
But this is, like that tweet about, I don't know the actress's name, Kimmy Schmidt. I don't remember.
She won a pageant from a group that was founded by some racist organization back in the day.
Yeah, and then and it was founded by
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? That was 180 years ago or something.
Well, it's like a Southern beauty pageant that's been around for 110 years. You think it wasn't racist?
Probably.
I mean, what the hell? But no, I mean, but the point I was trying to get to was that the person that started this whole thing and started this whole cancel fest on whatever the actress's name is, if you go to this person's Twitter, right? This person's got like 700 followers. So this person is just some random person, and wow, that must feel great. Like, look, I brought down this actress that has her own TV show, So that's the excitement of it. And then people can convince themselves, oh, I'm not doing it for attention. I'm doing it for, justice. And it's you're doing it because you're some asshole with 700 Twitter followers, and now you just canceled a famous millionaire, and you think like, wow, I'm look at how cool I am. I think that's what a lot of it is. I think a lot of it is just people really get off on having an effect on the life of somebody that they see as being more powerful than they are.
You used to have to at least get punched by Alec Baldwin to get some press, get him pissed at you and then boom. Get a couple thousand,
Yeah.
Those were the days.
Back in the day before you could see what your celebrities were eating for lunch every afternoon,
Yeah. And then we've seen Mark Miller, who, here we go. Here's a Hollywood Netflix guy. He also does comic books. Maybe you saw Jupiter's Legacy out there, people. He said that 10% of the people that talk about stuff on Twitter might actually be comic book readers. So why are you big companies kowtowing to the people on Twitter that don't make up, really any part of your sales whatsoever? And we do see this. Companies genuflect. Companies ask people. Creators come out and say, what would you like me to do? This type of stuff. And it's like, my brother feels that comic books aren't as big a deal right now because we actually have more connection and access to the creators working on it than we ever have before. And yeah. I don't know if that's totally true because I never really cared about who the creators were, although I did chase them back in the day. But now it seems that, you don't feel like you really need to as much. And I think it's this whole interacting with people on social media and not realizing what's real and what isn't and what's important and what isn't. Although The Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was a television show when I was a kid growing up, and watching a celebrity rise and fall and hopefully rise and maybe fall and rise again. These are the things the American public really love.
Yeah, it's reality TV for them. It's really fun for them to watch the celebrity crash and burn. But what you were saying a minute ago is I wish that these companies would realize. You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
I lost your video.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
I mean, these. I read an article talking about the Kimmy Schmidt thing, which somebody just told me she's named Ellie Kemper in the comments.
Excellent.
Thanks, Thomas. But she got canceled for whatever nonsense, and she immediately does this big, huge apology about how I'm so ignorant and terrible, and I need to reconsider everything, and God, I hate myself. And she, the big groveling apology about how everybody is right in the world except for me. And, this article is pointing out, like, well, the person that canceled you has like 700 followers. The whole canceling thing of her was like 12 people. And so I really wish that the companies and the celebrities would just realize that, this bullshit is like a dozen people on Instagram. Just tell them to fuck off. That's what I would do.
Now, it's more than that for Woody Allen, though, right?
Yeah, but it's for Woody Allen. It's still, I think, a small percentage of the actual world actually knows or cares about the Woody Allen scandal. As far as like on Twitter, to say Woody Allen is bad is the more popular opinion. But I think out of people that actually watched Woody Allen movies, these people on Twitter, go read the comments by the anti-Woody people. These are not people that are like watching art house films from the 70s. These are people that can barely type. There's not a big overlap between intelligent cinema fans and Woody and people who want to cancel Woody.
That's true, but I have seen there are God, how do you say it? There are people that have experienced sexual problems. I don't know, indiscretions. At least that's the nicest thing that could be. To like really out and out assaults talking about Woody Allen. And I think it's a little bit more emotional for them when they're having this conversation. But those are definitely people that are anti-Woody Allen also. It has nothing to do with their intelligence whatsoever. But, they're on the side of maybe believe all women, right. Or maybe I'm in that camp. And, that's just the way it is.
Right, because they're not talking about this particular case. They're talking about what happened to them, or they're talking about their opinion on the way our culture treats sexual assault in general terms, But they're not talking about this sexual assault. Mm-hmm. That's why, they get very emotional. That's why people get really, when people get really mad at me about this, they don't say, I think you did a poor job analyzing the facts you researched. They come after me like, you're a misogynist, you hate women, people are going to get raped because of you. This is why people are afraid to come forward with their stories. And it's like, okay, so you're not actually talking about Woody Allen, you're talking about in general how women are treated when they come forward with a story like this, Mm-hmm. And that's an important topic to care about, how women in general are treated when they have a sexual assault claim. I understand why people are passionate about that, but that doesn't mean that every single person that's ever been accused is automatically guilty. That's a really dangerous leap there,
Well, when that dude's going out and saying that, and I mean, I understand what he's saying, okay, when he says that it can be just a second. And I mean, I think he's talking about the most, like one of those train situations or, act situations. I don't know. But I kind of like feel like that's what he's talking about. Right. And then he's talking about how long a sexual encounter can be. I think he's saying, since it can be all of these things, Woody Allen did one of them. It's kind of what it sounds like.
He's partially listening to the arguments about Woody Allen, and then he's jetting off on this tangent about sexual assault in general. Mm-hmm. And it's true. That's a misconception that people might say, you weren't sexually assaulted. You were only with him for 5 minutes. And it's true. Sexual assault can happen in 5 minutes, and that's an important distinction. But that's not actually the reason that people think that Woody didn't do it. The issue with Woody is that he was in a house full of witnesses. And originally, they said that the nanny that came up with the 20 minutes of time, the 20 minutes of missing time, she originally said that Woody and Dylan were never out of her sight together. Then it became 10 minutes. Then it became 5 minutes. It took her 15 minutes. It took her a year before she worked herself up to 20 minutes. And what you can see is them gradually trying to carve out a time, because it's not just that the sexual assault had to happen. It's that he had to somehow get Dylan out of the living room where everybody was there. He had to get her up 2 flights of stairs. The closet's on the 3rd floor. He had to get her into Mia's attic. He had to get her down, calm her down, get her to play with the train, and then do a sexual assault. And so when, if you've got like a 10-minute window, it gets less plausible. So the window starts to climb to 15, then it climbs to 20, because we're not just saying he couldn't touch her in 20 minutes. We're saying this whole chain of events didn't happen. And what she originally said was that they were never out of sight together. And then, they go into that idiotic thing that she said about the closet was like like Michael Jackson's secret molesting rooms or whatever.
Behind every little train or whatever, there was a secret door going somewhere.
Yeah,
Pleasure Palace.
That's again, she doesn't know what she's talking about as far as the Woody Allen case, and she's making it about something she heard about Michael Jackson. The attic in the Woody Allen case, it was a little unfinished crawl space in the back of Mia Farrow's closet. It had a door that's about 3 feet tall, because it was just kind of like they could shove boxes and stuff back there. It wasn't even deep enough for Woody to, the way Dylan describes herself lying and Woody lying down behind her. They couldn't have even both been in there. Woody his feet would have been sticking out into the bedroom if they were doing that. It's this tiny little like nook behind in the back of the closet. And when they questioned Woody about it, they point to that Woody's statements about it were inconsistent about whether or not he'd been there. The reason it was inconsistent is because Woody didn't even know what they were talking about when they said, "Were you in the attic?" Because he didn't even know that the house had an attic. It's like a 3-foot tall crawl space in the back of the closet. He didn't even know that this crawl space existed. So for them to try to make it out like this is like the perfect molesting room hideaway, you couldn't even fit an adult and a kid in there. It was full of boxes, and
it had a train set also, I hear.
And okay, do you want me to go into the train?
Might as well. We're talking. Yeah.
Okay. So this is an Alan V. Farrow thing. Feel free to cut in because I feel like I'm going on a long tangent, but these are,
please go.
So, okay, here's the train story. And this is one that a lot of people have called me a liar on this too, because in my video, I talk about how Dylan never mentioned the train in public accounts until her blog in 2014. And then the train appears. So a lot of people said that, she was adding the train thing as extra detail, because her actual story of what happened to her, you can say it in 2 sentences. There's not enough to fill a blog. So, a lot of people thought like she was trying to add a little bit more detail to give it a little more, make it more believable. She's got more detail. So a lot of people thought that's where the train came from. Moses Farrow, her brother, I don't know if people will know the whole Moses Farrow thing, but Moses Farrow is her brother. He's gone on record many times that Mia Farrow was the abusive mother, and he still supports Woody Allen. Moses Farrow came out and he said that the attic was an unfinished crawl space. There were exposed nails. There were mothballs. It was full of boxes. The kids were not allowed to play up there. There were no electrical outlets. In Dylan Farrow's 2014 story, she said that there was an electric train set that was turned on and it was going in a circle around the attic, and that she was playing with it. Moses said that's nonsense, because the attic was full. There's no place. It's full of boxes. There's no place to put that. The kids weren't allowed to play up there. It's full of mothballs and rat droppings and nails. And he said that there's not even an electrical outlet, so you couldn't even plug in a train set. Even if you moved out all the boxes and put the train set up there, you couldn't plug it in. And Dylan, in her 2014 story, says that the train set was turned on and she was playing with it. Okay, so that's where it comes from. People are saying that there was no train set. Then the Alan V. Farrow show comes along and says, "Aha, there was a train set in the police report, so Moses is a liar," right? No. It's not news that there was a train set in the police report. Before the Alan V. Farrow thing, we already knew that there was a train set. They talk about the train set in the trial transcript, in the trial. I just called it a trial again. They talk about the train set in the hearing transcript. And they describe it. And I already knew that they described it. This is back in 1993 when the whole, the nanny, Christy Gerticke, the same one that came up with the 20 missing minutes, Grotecki, I think. Christy Gertecki. But anyway, she described the train in the attic at the time. Now, this is the interesting part. The train that Christy describes is it's like a big, like a Kinner train, like a toddler sits in it and rolls it around with their feet. It's like like 2 feet long train that they sit in, and the toddler trucks around the house. She said in the trial in 19. Now I'm just calling it a trial just to. She said in the hearing transcript that there was this train set there, so that's always been part of the description. But she's talking about the big train that you sit in, not an electric train. So Moses's account that Dylan's story about an electric train set traveling around the attic and plugged in, Moses said that was impossible. And the train that's actually in the accounts from 1992, it doesn't prove Moses wrong, because what Moses said is still true, that there wasn't an electrical outlet. The train when you see a train on the police diagram, it's probably the one that Christy describes, unless Christy just made up a different type of train out for no reason at all. The train that she described is one that fits with what Moses said. Mm-hmm. It was just up there for storage. The kids didn't play with it in there. It was just stored in there. So when you look at they have the police diagram and it says train set and there's a little circle where it went. That matches with what we've always known about the attic, and it doesn't confirm Dylan's account, and it doesn't contradict Moses's account. But rather than go into all that detail, everything that I just was boring you with, Alan V. Farrow just says, aha, there's a train. And they just leave it at that. And they had the trial transcripts, they have the hearing transcripts. So they know how dishonest they're being. They know that Christy described this different type of train, and they just choose to not tell you any of that and just say train. Right. So that's the long version of the whole train saga.
And now here we have Justin saying that telling that the HBO project never showed even a photo, let alone a video of the actual space. It was just a generic attic space.
Yeah, they had the kind of stock footage of a closet, and then they say, yeah, I've heard that because this is 28 years ago, that they've actually remodeled the crawl space in the Farrow house. So maybe they couldn't show it, but there would have been contemporaneous photos and whatnot that they could have shown. I would think that they wouldn't show that because it would obviously show that it's full of boxes, there's no electrical outlets, et cetera, all the stuff that makes Dylan's train set story ridiculous. So
and there's I'm sorry.
Okay.
And there's and in the podcast, the Alan V. Farrow extras, they have videos or audio that they put in that they couldn't put in the show. And I feel like, these are the things that really, they sound good, but they don't, they make for a good podcast, but they would not have made for the good documentary. Kind of going through with what you're saying.
I like the idea that they couldn't put things in the show when they had 4 hours to talk about this. And they have, they spend at least 30 minutes of the show on slow motion drone shots of foggy Connecticut lakes. But then they try to act like, we didn't have time to actually cover the facts of the case. We needed our drone shots.
A wonderful dichotomy between your show, your documentary, and theirs is that yours starts immediately, bang, right into all the problems, and then towards the end, it's uplifting. It's kind of like separating art from artist. Being able to still appreciate stuff even though you don't feel super happy about all this stuff that's going on, no matter how you feel about it. I kind of felt that way coming out of yours, whereas on the HBO one, it sets everything up beautifully. Here's this auteur making these fantastic films, and then there's this wonderful actress who loves all these kids and is like, and they're getting together, and then it's like dun dun dun, and then it's like it all goes to shit towards the all the way throughout the rest. And I like the fact that you're like, man, we're gonna hammer it through, we're gonna get through this stuff, and we're gonna talk about it, and answer the questions that are out there. Whereas they're just like kind of throwing this mess out there and kind of leaving you with it also. That's how I kind of felt.
I wanted to right away, in the first 5 minutes, say say the worst thing that he's been accused of. Just put it there, because I don't want to seem like I'm trying to hide it or like I'm trying to do a bait and switch. I don't want to be like, oh, I really like his movies, and by the way, there's this other thing, but let's not talk about it. I wanted to put the worst part right there and say, like, let's look at it. Theirs was much more, they're trying to like get you settled in and tell you how nice Mia is, and then this horrible man came and did these terrible things to this beautiful, perfect woman.
Yeah, this beautiful, perfect woman.
Right.
Mia Farrow, man, let me tell you. That's someone said earlier that, man, they had a real screwed up life growing up. Mia Farrow did. You can kind of see going through her relationships, maybe even Woody Allen. She is always like striving for, I don't know, somebody that's a little older than her, or maybe a lot older than her. And it's like it keeps happening over and over again. And I feel like if I was going to place blame on anybody, I don't know if that's really the right way I want to say it. It feels like a lot of the defense for Mia is like, well, if she would have been so angry at Woody, why would she not have been angry at Frank Sinatra for serving her divorce papers in front of her colleagues when she's working? She's still acrimonious to him, and she supposedly, reportedly, at least, she's still into him.
To this day, Mia Farrow says that Frank Sinatra was the love of her life. Frank Sinatra actually met her and told her dad that she was pretty when she was 10 years old. And I'm getting that from Mia Farrow's own memoir. She said that. And she tells it like this funny story that like, oh, isn't that funny that I ran into Frank when I was 10 and he thought I was a pretty girl. And he waited like 5 whole years before he started banging her. So I guess that makes it okay. But conversely, she tries to use Woody's relationship with Soon-Yi as evidence that Woody's some kind of like horrifying sex pervert. When her own sex life is, 5 times weirder, of course.
Well, her next husband, Previn, Andre, I can't remember.
Andre Previn, yeah.
He cheats on her with her best friend. Is that what it is? And she has no problem with him afterwards, at least for the sake of the kids. That's what it said in the podcast.
The way that Mia Farrow married Andre Previn is Mia Farrow was friends with Andre's wife, Dory Previn, was a singer, and Mia was friends with Dory Previn. Mia moved in with Dory Previn at one point, and she got knocked up by Andre. And then Andre left his wife and took Mia instead. But yeah, that's how Mia. She always tries to sort of rewrite it as, oh, I thought that Dory and Andre were at, their relationship was almost over. That was, if it was almost over, that was news to Dory, because she's never told the story that way. Dory Previn actually ended up being institutionalized over the whole thing, gave her a nervous breakdown. And she wrote a famous song, Beware of Young Girls, about Mia Farrow, betraying her. But Mia tries to act like, oh yeah, we didn't do it. I thought their relationship was over when I started sleeping with Andre. Nobody told his wife, if that was the case.
All right, here's a Mia thing. Hold on a sec.
Mia said very clearly that she felt frightened, and she was frightened about living up to his standard. Now, another way of putting that is you're walking on eggshells. You're constantly trying to meet somebody else's needs. And she said it was Woody's world. Well, of course it was. She's spending all her time trying to meet his needs. They shared agent. She didn't have her own autonomy, and she didn't have her own outlet. And she would be the one who would defend him. Oh, he's just in a bad mood. These types of behaviors. So again, when someone's coercively controlled, they more often than not do defend the perpetrator. So the psychology is very confusing for people outside of it who don't understand coercive control and what's going on when you have a victim who isn't seeing it as abuse.
Well, maybe that's not exactly what I wanted to play, but that's good enough. That's Mia defending Woody. There's another one I have, I think, where she talks about hanging out with him before she's of age, but it's okay because her parents knew about it and they were all right with it.
You mean
And
Mia and Sinatra?
I think it was, yeah, I think that's what it was.
Oh.
Yeah. And they're like, well, so they had sex with you before you were like, of age. And she's all, that's not important. Just kind of like explaining it away that way. And I just found that like interesting. And then here's this other situation where she's like defending Woody Allen up until, the moment where she's not anymore. And it's just interesting. That was a blow it.
No, that clip just makes the clip you play just makes me shake my head because it's just people, just pure fantasy about what went on in private between Mia Farrow and Woody Allen, and that he was somehow coercing her. And nobody knows that. It doesn't match with anything that we know about their relationship. It's just pure. I don't know how they think that he was coercing her. That there's a lot of bullshit in the Alan V. Farrow series about that he somehow like ruined her career after they split up, and it's all he did was stop employing her, because before that she only did work in his movies. And do they honestly expect that he should keep giving her parts when she's out there calling him a child molester? So I mean, he did nothing to hinder her career except he stopped hiring her.
Well, I've heard other ones where they talk about how he forces her to get another agent, his agent. Talk about how he's like totally controlling. He's, she's only making a certain amount of money, but they also think that his movies are making way more money than they're probably making anyway. So
right, that's every this has been public knowledge, common knowledge for 40 years. Everybody on a Woody Allen movie, all the actors get paid scale, which is Screen Actor Guild minimum wage, basically, because they do it because they want to work with him. If you work on a Woody Allen movie, you get he's a great writer, you get a great part, you win awards. They don't do it for the money. And so everybody that works on it, the idea that he was somehow abusing Mia Farrow by underpaying her, I'm pretty sure she got paid more than anybody else that ever worked on his movies, because everybody else would have got the minimum. I think he did up her salary over the years. And she got paid what everybody else got paid, or more than everybody else got paid. So
sounds like more, actually.
I think it was actually quite a bit more. But they try to make that out as if you have to completely ignore everything else about his movies to make that into somehow abusing Mia. And it's not. I mean, she did movies before him. She did movies after, but it's not like she was a red hot actress and he forced her to turn down all these other roles. She says herself in the Alan V. Farrow thing that she was primarily concerned about being a mother. She didn't want to work all the time. So they say that, and then in the same show they say that he was somehow keeping her from getting work. It's just, at least pick what you're accusing him of. Which one is it?
Now, do you think this is all? Do you think? I might as well ask it. Is this all just because of Sun Yi? I mean, ultimately, is this what it's come down to? I mean, don't get me wrong. Bad choices were made. Possibly a little bit creepy stuff. But if you believe in the premise that there was coaching involved, and there's a lot of things that I've listened to that says that children don't really fake this stuff. They don't make things up. If you continue through until adulthood and keep saying the same stuff, then it's real, and all this other stuff. And they talk about Woody's defense, and I've got clips that explain that and all this other stuff that would suggest that this is the way it is. But assuming it's the Mia Farrow thing, does it just stem from Woody Allen taking her daughter from her, marrying Sun Yi? And I mean, it's a lot to be pissed off about. I don't know if I would try and force this rape situation. If it didn't
I don't even
happen,
think it's so much that I don't think it's so much that he took her daughter, because from the way Sun Yi describes it, Mia didn't really like Sun Yi all that much. I think it's more that Mia is mad that Sun Yi took her man. Mia's she's made some very strange comments in interviews over the years where she talks about Sun Yi, and she talks about Oh, Suni got my house, she got my seat at Elaine's, she got my, all the perks that you get from dating a famous director. She's like, oh, Suni got all the stuff I used to have. And it's like, are you concerned for a rape victim, or are you jealous that somebody got your good table at the celebrity restaurant?
And you kind of paint Mia Farrow as, I don't know. Well, maybe Ronan Farrow is actually the person you paint the most negative picture in your film.
Well, yeah, I did.
I mean, a little omen boy is what he is.
I couldn't. It was just too easy to make like the Rosemary Baby clips and the Spawn of Satan clips. But I did a whole. I can send you the link and you can post it for people if they want, because I did a whole article about Ronan Farrow separate, because within my video it's kind of a tangent, but I did with Robert Whitey and we did a lot of research, and it's kind of been, the article's been ignored, I think, because it's on Robert Whitey's website, and a lot of people that know him think that he's he's Woody's friend, so they think he's a crank and he's just a Woody supporter, and so they kind of write him off. But we did this article about Ronan Farrow where we did a ton of research, and I got quotes from all these people involved. I got quotes from Woody Allen, and I'm careful about how I talk about certain parts of this. Ronan Farrow, I have no problem. He's a documented liar 100 times over. He's totally full of shit. So I have no problem just calling Ronan Farrow a liar and making fun of Ronan Farrow. That's why I let myself kind of go into comedy for that part of the video. But yeah, that link, that it's a huge thing to get into, but you could just, not that he misspeaks or he fudges things a little. He's deliberately misrepresenting and lying about things over and over and over. And in that article I wrote, there's dozens of them. So yeah, Ronan Farrow is just full of shit. And I wrote that article even before Alan v. Farrow came out. And Ronan, as time goes on, and Ronan keeps lying, and Ronan keeps saying bullshit, and nobody wants to call him on it, he keeps getting bolder and bolder, because in Alan v. Farrow, he starts telling the story about how when they put Dylan in therapy, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember Dylan's personality changed. She was really talkative, and then Dylan started to get more quiet and blah, blah, blah. And this is why we put Dylan in therapy. Except that if you actually know the therapy he's talking about, when the therapy sessions he's talking about started, that started when Ronan was about 1 year old. So not only is Ronan claiming that he has memories from when he's 1 year old, he's claiming to have like a detailed understanding of Dylan's personality and how her personality changed, and and that he understood that she was becoming less talkative. And here's 1 year old Ronan going, Dylan's less talkative. This must mean something, And it's he gets so bold with his lying. It's just
Roseanne Barr remembers some really impressive thing. I mean, not impressive. She has some impressive remembrances of some bad things that happened to her when she was just months old. So supposedly,
Roseanne Barr, we know, is another very stable person.
Not when she's on Ambien, but other than that, she is.
Well, I loved the Roseanne show growing up, and I feel bad for her because I feel like she's a very messed up person now. And so I don't jump on her too much because she said some things that were indefensible, but I feel bad for her because I think she was a great comedian in the day. She really was. But
she was. I thought she was also.
But yeah, that makes,
we'll do a Roseanne show some other day, though.
Yeah, she remembers stuff when she was months old. Yeah, that makes sense. She might actually believe that she remembers from when she was months old. Ronan suddenly has memories of whatever it suits him to have memories of, because a lot of the things that Ronan is now claiming were his own memory are actually taken from Mia Farrow's memoir. These are stories that Mia Farrow originally told in the first person, and now suddenly in the last 3 or 4 years, Ronan is suddenly, yes, I remember when this and this happened. And it's like, really? You remember like verbatim Mia Farrow's own personal recollections.
Who wrote the Attic song? There was an Attic song, one of the Previns.
Yeah, Dory Previn, the same one I'm talking about before.
Yeah, and it's like this creep. Well, I mean, in the context of this story, it's creepy, right?
Yeah, she wrote a whole song. It's with my daddy in the attic, and it's about incest in an attic, and it's this whole thing. And Yeah, she says that when Mia was living in her house stealing her husband, she said that Mia used to walk around the house singing that song, and then Mia loved that song. And then, of course, years later, the story about Dylan is that song, like point by point. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting coincidence, And for Mia also to use a Dory Previn song as the basis of her allegation, after Dory Previn wrote a song attacking Mia, Mia's obviously got a little thing going with Dory Previn, of course. So
this is like sordid.
Oh yeah, sort of. This is why people talk about it for 30 years, because like I say, the actual attic story you can disprove in 5 minutes, but there's 30 years of family drama and gossip that just keeps it alive.
Well, the thing that gets me is that Woody was in trouble for Sun Yi, and nobody wanted him around, and yet here he's coming for some visitation, but everybody knows that he's not to be alone with anybody, especially Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mia and somebody leaves the house, and then it's like, we lost Woody.
Yeah.
Where's Woody? Where's Dylan?
They've spent 4 months telling all the babysitters and everybody that Woody is evil and Woody is satanic and Woody is the devil. And this is something too I'm not pulling out of my ass. The child therapists and nannies and witnesses have all described identical accounts of Mia Farrow saying that Woody is the devil and we have to find a way to stop him. We have to find a way to get Woody. And so she's been saying this for months at this point. And then they know that Woody's coming up to the house that day for visitation with Ronan and Moses and Dylan. And they know that Woody's in his car on his way up to the house. And suddenly, for undisclosed reasons, Mia and her friend decide that this is the time where they have to go shopping for 3 or 4 hours.
You might want to wait.
And they just disappear when they know that Woody's in his car on the way up there. Now, what they didn't know at the time, and this is another thing from the hearing transcripts that the Alan V. Farrow show conveniently forgets to mention, when they decide they have to go shopping when Woody's on his way up, Woody actually got there late. And in the hearing, they show Woody has records from his car phone. He has records from his driver showing what time they left New York and what time they got to the house in Connecticut. So we know when Woody got there. The thing is that Woody got to the house in Connecticut maybe 20 minutes before Mia got back from shopping, probably less. They might even have got back to the house at about the same time. So the time they left to go shopping to set Woody up, they wanted Woody alone in the house with Dylan, but Woody got there late. So Woody was only in the house like 10 minutes before Mia got there. And so that's why originally the nanny, Christy, was saying Woody and Dylan were never alone together, because Woody got there right before Mia got there. And then you read the interviews and you watch the account between the year between the accusation and the hearing, and that's when they're desperately trying to carve out time when Woody might have been alone with Dylan, and that's why the timelines keep shifting and stretching, and the time it all becomes very they got to go through like some serious quantum physics to invent this time when Woody might have been, because the truth is that Woody was barely even at the house during the time when Mia wasn't at the house. So this is why in the hearing they lay all this out really clearly, and it's just in the hearing it's just cut and dry that the idea of Woody molesting Dylan in the attic, it didn't happen. It's disproven. It's over. It's done. The evidence is in. It's done. It didn't happen, and that's all in the hearing transcript. You can read all of that. And for some strange reason that you might be able to guess, none of those details made it into the Alan V. Farrow show.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, just the title alone, Alan V. Farrow, it just felt yeah, like there's a frame of mind. All right, so a documentary, okay? A documentary. A lot of people will say, "Oh, I like documentaries. I like something that isn't slanted. It's giving me an open point of view. Something that I can formulate an opinion on my own." But the thing is, let's be real about it. Documentaries always have, unless maybe like we're talking about a nature one, and even then, there's probably something. There is a point of view. There is something that someone's trying to get through. But this one, Alan V. Farrow.
Well, that's why a lot of people
have a point of view.
Yeah, a lot of people have tried to use that against my video, and they say your video is not a documentary because the title says Woody Allen's innocent, and they're like, so you're just biased. You're just looking. And the difference is that like you just said, every documentary has a point of view. Even nature documentaries, you can't observe without affecting what you observe. That's an issue documentary filmmakers have played with and pondered since they invented films. That's why I named my video that, because I was trying really hard just to be honest about my conclusion. I was trying to, this isn't a bait and switch. I'm showing you the conclusion that I've reached. Alan V. Farrow, they call it Alan V. Farrow because they're trying to pretend like, oh yeah, we're going to show you both sides and let both sides fight it out. And they don't do that. It's a lie. They make no attempt to do that, you know? So I think the reason I did it the way that I did is because I just think that's the more honest reason. Because of course you're going to have a point of view. Everything has to.
When you're making a movie and you have these points of view, and they seep in often. A lot of this older man, younger woman kind of situation. Like with Mariel Hemingway, right? Is that the right one?
She's the one in Manhattan.
Yeah, in Manhattan, and then it kind of feels like it bleeds in real life with maybe Sun Yi, possibly Dylan, depending on how you feel about that. And it's not the only one where, I mean, the thing is that Woody Allen's not getting younger as he gets older. Anytime he puts himself in the lead opposite someone, it's probably going to be someone younger than him, even if they're an old bag. That's just the way it is. But, there is, I don't know. It's just one of those things, older people and younger people, whether it's male and female, and reverse it around or whatever. But people really get hung up on the fact that his movies, or at least some of his movies, and I think they're really talking about like really specific ones, that it feels like this is like a game plan for him. You know what I mean? Is that
the idea that his movies are somehow like propaganda his movies are like advertisements for the May-December romance as being like an ideal romance. It's just so well. Okay, the first thing here is that people try to use this as evidence that he molested Dylan, and they're talking about like a man with a 21-year-old woman, and this is just to repeat myself, like the giant whataboutism, because there's no similarity. Maybe you think you don't like that he's dating a 21-year-old, that you think that's bad. You can have that opinion, but there's no similarity between consensual sex with a 21-year-old and molesting a 7-year-old. But that said, he's made 50 movies, and there's, I could do like whatever, break down the math, but there's like, maybe 5 or 10 movies that have some form of like an older man with a younger woman. But you look at that in the context of 50 movies, it's really not a lot. That's in real world relationships, it's a very common dynamic, and when he does deal with an issue like an older man and a younger woman, it's almost every single time it's about, if you actually look at what he's doing and don't just look at the ages, the point of the story is always to make the older man a kind of sad, pathetic character that's trying to recapture his youth, and the older man always ends up looking like a fool, and it's really sad that he's still trying to be young even though he's not that age anymore, and that's always the gist of the story. Even in Manhattan, the kind of the joke of that character is that the character is such a mess, he can't decide what he wants, and he's going after a 17-year-old when he'd be better off with the Diane Keaton character. And then in the end of the movie, it's kind of like a joke that this guy's such a mess that the 17-year-old turns out to be much smarter about relationships than he is, And so it's kind of this joke of like, this guy that, he's doing this because he's kind of a messed up guy. So to take that and then say that this is somehow Woody Allen is trying to tell us like, yes, this is the ideal relationship, should be like this. This is the ideal relationship. If you actually watch the movies, It's the opposite of what he's saying. And the fact that he's made 50 movies, you can go through 50 movies, and if you want to make a documentary, you can say, oh, look, there's like 7 or 8 movies that are about an old man with a young girl. Yeah, but that's out of dozens and dozens of movies where he has middle-aged people in relationships, old people in relationships, 2 young people together, whatever. He's made, however, in all of his movies, however many couple hundred romantic pairings with his fictional characters, So to act like that's his primary obsession and all the movies are about pushing this one topic, is really just, it's really, if you watch all of his movies, it's really just dishonest to try to make that as though that is his, something he's obsessed with,
It's always a thing when you're making yourself the lead romantic role anyway in a movie. It's kind of, I always felt weird when Quentin Tarantino was saying the N-word in all his movies.
Yeah, because he's the one that wrote it.
You're the one that wrote it. You're the one that wrote yourself in that situation, Woody Allen, that type of thing. But it's a movie. It needs to get made, right?
Well, that's kind of, I remember a Siskel and Ebert episode where they were talking about this when Curse of the Jade Scorpion came out. And Woody, he was about 60 at the time, and he cast Helen Hunt as his love interest. And Helen Hunt was 35 or something. And they're like, Siskel thought that this was really bad. He's like, he said, Woody Allen's the same age as Judi Dench. He should have a love interest that's the same age as Judi Dench. And it's like, yeah, but he's trying to make like a romantic comedy. And, there's a certain leeway when you understand that he's the director. This is not really him. It's like a fantasy. And he said, he said himself, I think this is kind of why, as he's got older, the movies have got a little bit less autobiographical, because he does like movies that are escapism to an extent. And he's always said he likes the movies. He talks about old Hollywood movies and he calls them champagne comedies, where he likes, he likes a certain amount of escapism where it's like people are in nice period clothing and the man gets the attractive lady, and, so he wants a certain, so yeah, he's not so interested in making a movie about picking up an 80-year-old woman,
right?
Because he makes movies that are supposed to be a fantasy. Mm-hmm. But because of the fact that he's making it as a fantasy, that sort of ruins the idea that you're supposed to take this literally as an example of his real life,
Well, this is what happens when we put ourselves out there as creators. And, anybody else can come and take an interpretation. And if they're the kind of people that want to involve your real life into that, then, they've got a great term paper. They've got a great essay they can write.
Oh, yeah.
Rick, could you talk a bit about the controversial prosecutor Frank Mako and how he figures in the saga as well as in the HBO series? He's being talked about a lot these days. Is he the guy that has like he's decorated and he has all these awards for solving all these cases and helping children and all this other stuff? He was looking into this case and then got fired. Is this the guy?
No, I'm not sure.
Oh, damn, I may have the wrong guy.
I think you're talking about John Leventhal, the doctor at the Yale New Haven clinic that interviewed Dylan. Oh, well, he was in charge of the investigation. His other people interviewed Dylan. Frank Mako was the prosecutor that declined to press charges against Woody Allen.
Oh, is that the one? Okay.
But yeah, he came out and made an extremely unethical statement where he said, even though we're not pressing charges, we do have probable cause to press charges if we wanted to.
Gotcha.
And he tried to claim that we could press charges, but we're not because we don't want to traumatize Dylan, which is nonsense, because he then goes on in the same thing to say that they couldn't press charges because when they tried to get Dylan to talk about the case, Dylan would freeze up and go silent. So when your entire case is the word of this little girl, and when you ask her, did Daddy molest you? She refuses to say that Woody molested her. You have no case. So obviously he couldn't take the case to court if their only witness was refusing to say that she was the victim of a crime. Mm-hmm. And he said that himself, but he tries to put the spin on it of, I was doing it to spare her the the trauma of a trial.
Right.
But yeah, people really like to take his quotes and use it against his ridiculous quotes and use it against Woody.
Okay, so Coffee Junkie says it was never about that she was younger, but that she was his adopted daughter. I'm assuming you're talking about Sun Yi. I got this to play. Hold on a sec.
Most likely she doesn't see it as abuse because she felt so special. And yes, everybody with their adulation for him, and he is now giving her all this special attention. I would imagine that from a child who was very shy, who'd been rescued, who would only say a few words and would talk about how her mama, her birth mama, was so horrible to her and wouldn't let her eat. I mean, let's not forget, Mia spent a lot of time working with Sun Yi to build that trust. And then in comes Woody Allen, bestows all this special treatment upon her. And so, yes, I would imagine that she felt very special indeed and very connected to him. But it wasn't an affair. And we want to make that very clear. This is not an affair. This is not a relationship. This is grooming. Abuse doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it happens overtly and covertly. And oftentimes people don't even know what they're seeing. Well, he put it on the big screen and everyone thought that was okay. So he was just carrying on.
Well, that was deliberate too, Laura. I mean,
absolutely, mass grooming.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Umberto, my fiance, just really understood, that he had been groomed and it felt so uncomfortable. You know, he said, I'll never watch a Woody Allen movie again.
Good. I'm proud of him for that.
But he adored those movies like Lisa. And again, it's people don't really know what they're seeing or what they're understanding on the screen, where young girls think, oh, wow, isn't this great? An older man, an old pervert abuser men have full access to women and girls, more importantly girls, and no one says anything about that.
So wait, before we go into that, somebody pointed out a mistake I made in the comments that I said I saw Gene Siskel, and he's right. I think it was Siskel wasn't on the show anymore. I think it was the Siskel and Ebert show, but I think it was Richard Roper was the one that was talking with Ebert, and Richard Roper was the one that didn't like Woody dating Helen Hunt, I believe. It was 20 years ago that I saw this episode, so I think Richard Roper, if you're going to call me on that detail. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted.
No, quite all right. So Sun Yi, not a daughter of Woody Allen's, correct?
Right. So what was the
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. This is this is what I'm talking about right there. Is they said that it wasn't about Sun Yi's age, it was that she was his stepdaughter. Well, Sun Yi was never his stepdaughter. Sun Yi was Andre Previn's daughter. Woody didn't live with Mia. Woody hardly saw Sun Yi. The interesting thing about this, though, is that, and the interesting thing about the clip that you just played, is these people are going on all these speculations about Sun Yi and what Sun Yi's role was and how Sun Yi was affected by this. Well, Sun Yi has told us her side of the story. Sun Yi has done, she wrote a long piece about it. She did an interview about it, and she wrote a big thing about it. And all these believe women types, just to bolster their story here, completely ignore what Sun Yi has said about her own life, her own relationship. And, Sun Yi has said over and over again that before they started dating, she hardly had contact with Woody. She said she didn't like Woody because she didn't like Mia Farrow, and she thought that since Woody and Mia were together, Woody must be an asshole too. That's basically, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But yeah, she said that she didn't like him. She never got along with Mia, and she hardly had contact with Woody. The ironic part is that the reason that Woody started hanging out with Sun Yi is that Mia would send them out to see basketball games and whatever because Mia wanted Woody to be closer to her kids. And so I guess he just got a little bit closer than Mia was hoping. But the reason
now,
the reason
kind
that
of creepy still.
The reason that Woody and Sun Yi were even spending time together was because Mia was concerned that they had no relationship. They didn't know each other, and Woody was trying, and Mia was trying to get them to spend more time together. But the point is that they hardly had any contact before she was about 21 years old.
Although that they try and these shows, they paint the question of whether or not they were really hanging out with each other before that. There was the nude pictures, the stuff that was left out, and all that other stuff. And it's. I mean, I wouldn't want to find those pictures on my computer, no matter what.
Well, I mean,
I don't want anybody, to get caught with that.
If I mean, she was 21 in the pictures, at least 21.
Well, I mean, people are painting other.
Yeah, but that's
trust
more.
Me, they do. They're out there, saying that. You don't know if she's 17, maybe she was 16. They were hanging out with each other before then, so that other things were happening.
Right. So, but if they say that, then they're calling Suni a liar. So it's like, do you want to believe women or not? Because Suni has said herself how old she was.
Well, I see that a lot with minorities that are Republicans and stuff like that. It's like, oh, you're just brainwashed. You don't know what you're doing. You're selling yourself out. That type of stuff. That may be true.
Yeah, there's a very.
But you know what? They are rational. I assume intelligent. I assume people that can make their own decisions. These are outliers, maybe, but it is true.
Yeah, there's a very sexist, very paternalistic attitude about Suni, where they say that she is somehow not capable of making her own decision that she wants to be with Woody Allen when she's 21 years old. And it's interesting for people to take this very paternalistic attitude that they're disregarding her own choices about her own relationships. And they act as though she was somehow tricked or groomed into this. Well, they've been married for 25 years. That's an awfully long time to just be tricked,
It's not only that, Rick. Some of these ladies on these podcasts I'm listening to and freely admit that they've gotten into relationships with older people when they were younger.
Well,
it's like, what?
And it's, I mean, that we're trying to act like a 21-year-old is the same as a little child. That's insane. And also, I think really sexist, because it's always that a 21-year-old woman, oh, she's too young to make the decision for herself. Well, when do we decide that a woman is old enough to make her own decisions about her own love life? Does she have to be 25? Does she have to be 30? I've seen people recently online talking about 30-year-old women in a relationship with a 35-year-old man, and they're saying that he groomed her, and that's fucking insanity.
When do you take anybody, male or female, whatever? I don't even when do you take responsibility for your own self?
Right.
We saw in comic books Warren Ellis.
Right.
He
I was
got in
thinking
trouble.
about that, actually. Yeah.
Warren Ellis, horn dog, probably by all accounts.
Well,
this
sure.
guy's on click on the internet across the sea, trying to score some tang when he comes to America. That type of thing. He's going to hit 5 different cities. There's probably 5 different people on the other end of his typing. And when people find out, or jobs don't get given, or whatever, he groomed me. Well, you were 22 years old when he was grooming you.
Right.
I mean, sure, he's like close to 50, but
he sounds like
come on, you're not being groomed.
No, he was very into when he was out touring conventions. He was very into hooking up with women at the shows. He was maybe an asshole. He maybe lied to some of the women. He maybe he let some of the women think that they were his girlfriend when they were more of a fuck buddy. All of that is probably true. But for like 25-year-old women to say he groomed me, I was coerced.
If we're talking about people that are of the age of consent, I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, the word grooming doesn't even mean anything anymore. That word's been completely destroyed. But if we're talking about a 25-year-old woman that sleeps with a man, and they're trying to act like he's so rich and powerful, he writes comic books. Give me a fucking break. I write comic books. Look at this in my apartment, all right? But we're talking about a 25-year-old woman has consensual sex with a man, and then afterwards he finds out she finds out, oh, he had a girlfriend on the side. Okay, yeah, that sucks. Maybe he's an asshole, but that's not a sexual assault. That was not grooming. That was you got into a relationship with a guy that wasn't as nice as you hoped.
Right.
Which I think we really need to make a distinction between that and, sexual assault.
Yeah, well, for sure. And I don't know, and maybe something happened. I don't know. The accounts that I've read when it comes to him, and I've read some, It always starts off with, this is me. This is how I grew up. And when I met Warren Ellis, I was happy. It's probably like a lot of people meeting Woody Allen for the first time. It's like, wow, he's interested in me. Wow, he wants to go to Paris. Something he seems to say a lot. Let's go to Paris.
Yeah. Well, but
He's got a shtick, is what I'm saying. Woody Allen.
Yeah, but so did the Christina Engelhardt is the young woman that's in Alan v. Farrow that she said they leave out the fact that she said herself that Woody never had sex with her until she was legal age. They just kind of leave it that Woody met her when she was very young. And they try to make this like a grooming, coercion kind of thing. She's admitted herself that she went up to Woody Allen and gave him her phone number. Woody Allen had no idea who she was until she hit on him. So how this is somehow evidence that he's like grooming or pursuing these young women. She went up to Woody Allen. She hit on Woody Allen. She's admitted herself that she never had sex with him until she was legal age. And after after they broke up or stopped, they were never even together, but after they stopped seeing each other, Engelhardt moved on to Federico Fellini. She was a model. She was trying to date famous directors, obviously. She was doing one famous director after another because she was a model. And and it's the same thing as Warren Ellis, is that I think a lot of these women thought that he was going to get them a big job at a big comic book company. And then they were upset when he didn't.
They found out he had so little power.
And they found out that, oh, wait.
He had a big gut, but little power.
They found out if you're fucking for power, don't fuck a comic book writer. That's what they
found out. Please, you stupid fools.
That's why there's a quote that certain idiots have tried to use this quote against me from one of my old comics where I made this crack about having legions of sexually submissive fans that were waiting on me and feeding me grapes, right? I made this joke. I said twink fans, legions of sexually submissive twink fans waiting on me. Which was a fucking joke because I write comic books that sell like 2,000 copies, right? So the idea that I would have legions of fans, I thought that was kind of hilarious, right? The idea that that people would think I'm so powerful that I would have all these sexually submissive fans because I write comic book. This is on a comic book that I'm saying this, and so obviously I have no power, and I don't have any legions of fans, But I've had people take that and try to like, oh, look at him, like he's trying to groom his fans and bullshit like that.
There's some interesting comments talking about Ronan Farrow. He gets the coverage for the supposed Sinatra pedigree. So yeah, that's Mia Farrow's Ronan is Sinatra's kid. Is that what that's supposed to be?
That's what they've been saying since about 2013 because it makes for clickbait. I personally don't think it's true, but that's a whole long saga.
Cool. I remember Ronan Farrow. My first finding out about him is when I would watch MSNBC. He would often be a guest, and then he got a gig on the weekend, I do believe. And he irked me a lot. Gotta tell, for a guy that watched MSNBC.
Oh, Ronan Farrow?
Yeah, Ronan Farrow irked me.
Yeah.
Boy, when you're watching Lawrence O'Donnell and Ronan Farrow upsets you,
He does got a smackable face, doesn't he?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. It's like, I'd rather watch Anderson Cooper.
He's just so incredibly pompous and full of himself that it can wear you down after.
Well, he has this face, it's just like it's always put on,
Well, half of it's plastic at this point. But...
Let me play this video. I stole that.
Was that your way of telling me to get out of here?
Not yet. No, we're going to say goodbye to everybody. I want to let everybody know that next week we'll be talking about comic books and comic books only. There'll be a lot less culturally significant. Other than they're comic books, so they're very culturally significant. We also at Fantastic Comics have a Patreon page. Hey, you have a Patreon page too, don't you, Rick?
I sure do. It's on my Twitter if anybody wants to see it.
What is it, Rick Worley?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So you could do that. Just type his name in. You also have a YouTube channel. We've been talking about that all night. Rick Worley also, right?
Yeah, my YouTube's Rick Worley too.
Yeah, that's good. So only the Twitter handle's different.
Yeah. And my name on Twitter comes up as Rick Worley, but the handle is Blood of the Land, which confuses some people.
Let's see. ATN says, great episode. Thanks for coming on, Rick. I agree, ATN. Thanks for coming on, Rick.
You're welcome.
Your YouTube channel. Oh, I gotta learn something from you. It's very successful, isn't it?
It's doing all right considering that I never post videos.
You've got legions of fans that are waiting to feed you grapes, right?
Yeah, I'm rich and famous, and I've just the sexually submissive fans everywhere, and it's crazy.
See, now what I've learned is if you're popular this way, you have to let people know you're coming to their town. And then like Warren Ellis, you just make sure they have the amount of Red Bull or cigarettes or blowjobs available to you, and you're going to be happy.
I used to joke about this a lot because you've actually read my comics. A lot of my comics were about like my dating life and stuff. And so I would do drawings of the guys I was dating and whatever. And I would joke about guys getting naked for me because I'm a famous artist and they want me to draw them and everything. And so that was like a recurring theme in my comics, was that I would get sexual favors in exchange for drawing people. And, it's a joke. It's if you actually read it, you can see what my real life is like. But I always say that if people actually wanted to use, if they actually read my comics, they'd have all sorts of material to use against me, but they don't actually read. So
got a big question here, and I know it's going to be tough. You might want to have categories or subsections. What is your favorite Woody? I'm assuming Woody Allen film, Rick.
Purple Rose of Cairo, closely followed by Match Point, closely followed by Annie Hall.
Wow.
And Husbands and Wives and Deconstructing Harry.
Wow. Damn. I top out at what's the latest of the ones that I probably
you stepped around Sleeper, right?
It's Sleeper. Oh my God, why am I having such a blank right now? What's the sex one? What you're afraid to ask about sex, or what we're afraid to ask. And then Take the Money and Run is my favorite one, probably, personally.
That's like kind of his first real
It's such
movie.
a slapstick, stupid movie.
I like the Gene Wilder bit with Gene Wilder and the sheep. The rest of that movie is kind
of... No, man, he carves soap to look like a gun. Takes him out.
Okay, Take the Money. I was talking about everything you wanted to know about sex.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, well, what about the cocaine part, right?
The
sperm, all that stuff.
Sperm bit's okay.
That's all right. Yeah.
That's why I was trying to make you watch Match Point, because I really like his later, more dramatic movies. If anything.
I should watch that then. The thing is that on the streaming services that are out there, not a lot of Woody Allen movies are actually available. HBO has like 5 of them, and they're kind of like all over the place, if I'm not mistaken. And the older ones aren't really up at all, if I'm not mistaken.
They're Amazon just bought MGM, I think it is, which means that they own Woody's 80s catalog into the beginning of the 90s. Those movies are on Amazon now if you pay for them, but they might be free on Prime soon. Now that
I'm cheap, so if I don't think about it, I've never paid for a movie to stream yet. It's a weird thing. It's just it's a foreign concept to me. I can go to a movie. Well, I don't, but I could go to a movie theater and ultimately be renting it there. But to do it at home, it's just, I used to get videotapes from the video store, rented movies that way. But streaming it online and even having it for a month afterwards, no fees afterwards, something about that is really hard to do.
I used to have walls of Blu-rays and DVDs like this, but I kicked the habit eventually. But yeah,
man, I don't know. It's important. Look, Woody Allen could be canceled even more than he is now. Your favorite things. Maybe it's an off episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Hey, you get it. You know the reason why it is the way it is. But to all the other people out there, it's easy to just cancel it out, get it out of the thing. Don't ever have to worry about anybody's feelings being hurt. And then you're like, oh, I wish I had that Blu-ray.
Yeah, because when you stream it, you never really own it, even if you buy a stream. Even on Disney Plus, they've edited a lot of the movies, cut out bits or covered bits. So yeah. I still do. I like physical media, but most of the physical media I've saved to my computer now, rather than keeping all the discs.
It's a good move.
But I do like having my own. I have external hard drives where all the DVDs I used to have, I have them on an external hard drive so that I don't trust streaming to keep it up there forever.
Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, it's just the way it is these days. And not only that, but the company goes out of business. Recently in comics, Madefire. They're a local company that was doing streaming for comic books. And I think they had some other companies involved with them, and they're out of business. Well, so are all those comics that you were that you had possession of.
Yeah,
that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Oh yes, Joss Whedon. Maybe that's the one.
Isn't he already canceled?
Not only is he already canceled, I don't know. This one, not only that, he's canceled for being a jerk around women, supposedly. But he's also a jerk around Ray Fisher. So now he's got it. That's why it was so important that Jeff Johns' ex-wife came out.
Yeah, so Whedon is racist and sexist.
Yeah, but we'll probably find out it was like, a bad day.
Well,
3 or 4 times.
Maybe he's just an asshole. Like, I mean, like maybe on a high-stress movie set, sometimes people are rude. Like maybe that's possible.
Look, I couldn't act. Oh my God, you're in a trailer in the middle of nowhere. I don't like being away from my house, even for the work day. And you got to remember these lines. This asshole can't put the right filter on the camera or on the light or whatever you need.
Right.
You have to do it. John Cena for the Suicide Squad had to eat an empanada. I think it was over 20 takes. Like after the first one, he was like, "All right, I got this good." 19 more to go. Think about how you would be at the end of that day.
Well, what bothers me about it is
maybe you're not even a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, it bothers me because people used to understand that movies were an art form, and that you're as when you're there, if you're doing it right, you're very emotional. You're dealing with very personal things. You're creating art. And now people kind of expect it to be like an office and everybody's perfectly polite and never says the wrong thing. And that kind of bothers me just because, not that people should be allowed to be racist or sexist on a movie set, but there's supposed to be an understanding that, emotions run high because you're making something very personal, very intimate. And now they just kind of want it all to be procedural on a movie set. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really, really bad. And I think that that's why they make it out to be this thing of that it was like, the auteur idea was a way of excusing behavior of bad men and like, artists were allowed to get away with anything. Well, no, if they really did something, if they really harmed somebody or sexually harassed somebody, it was still a problem. But they understood that if you're an artist making a movie, that, emotions are going to run very high. You're not going to be a perfect person all the time, And I don't think that there's anything wrong with, you need to understand that if you want to make a real movie and not, sort of like a corporate blockbuster movie.
I saw 2 comments I want to ask you about. The first one was, and this is social media, so it's those 10 people or whatever. Someone said, I think that method acting, we should be done with that. And I think that kind of, like Dustin Hoffman's a famous method actor. He is notorious now for having been a jerk on some of his sets, especially Tootsie. He got a little grabby or something like that. He's full of himself. He gets into his character and won't come out until afterwards. That type of stuff. You find out about other actors like that. Is that just one of those hot takes that someone has, or is that? Do you agree with that sentiment about
I think it's kind of a misrepresentation of method acting, because you can method act and still not abuse people around you. It's you could be a method actor and play Hannibal Lecter, but you don't actually murder people. It just means that you try to stay in character to a certain degree, but you're still a rational human, you know? And I think a lot of people, they use method acting as kind of an excuse for dickhead things that they did. And I think, you know, you could be a method actor without, like, you know, whatever Jared Leto, when he played Joker, was sending people used condoms or something. And I'm like, okay, that, you know, I could say I'm staying in character. I think it's a misrepresentation of what method acting is.
Mm-hmm.
Because method acting, I think, is a legitimate strategy for keeping the headspace for the character. And I think a lot of people kind of turn it, they associate it with these stories of actors that just kind of turn into assholes on set, which is not, I don't think is really the same thing, you know?
Okay, so I got one last one. And then we'll say goodbye. I saw a friend of mine on one of those social media sites say something about Woody Allen's movies were never good. Now, I don't know if they feel that thinking about the case that wasn't really a case. I mean, Woody, I really think that, like, going and, like, oh, you know what, you're gonna say I raped someone, you know what, I'm gonna sue for custody. that probably irked a few people the wrong way also. But, you know, taking all of that, taking Sun Yi and all that into consideration, it's just not true. It's just a false statement that Woody Allen makes bad movies, right?
How close of a friend is this friend of yours?
Well, the thing is, I saw other people that I know say stuff also, and I know I have people that feel very strongly they won't watch this episode. They're going to have their preconceived notions already. I have a lot of, in comic books, there's a lot of people that have preconceived notions about a lot of things. We could really get into the weeds, but it's not time to do that. But Woody Allen, does he make good movies?
I asked how good of a friend it is because I'm trying to decide how insulting I can be.
You can be insulting because I didn't use their name anyway.
No, because I've seen people make the same thing, and I've commented on it too. That you can think that Woody Allen is evil or the devil or whatever, and I don't. It's the whole other issue of separating the art from the artist, and I don't have a problem with watching art by people that I think are bad people. So if I thought that Woody Allen was a bad person, it wouldn't change my opinion of his movies. That's just not really how I am. Mm-hmm. So having said that, a lot of people feel the need now that they don't like Woody Allen to also dismiss the work, and I think that you can say whatever you want about Woody Allen. But if you try to say that he's not an important filmmaker, I just kind of think that you're stupid. Because he's not only, I mean, he's not only made important, like, masterpieces like Annie Hall, that's one of the most important films ever made. It's not just that he made, like, one of the most important films ever made. He's made like 20 or 30 of the most important films ever made. You know, he's earned his place as one of the great directors like 10 times over. You know, he's like
Charlie Chaplin.
Well, like Bob Dylan, to bring it full circle, you know.
Oh, very good. I like that.
Bob Dylan has. It's not just that Bob Dylan wrote this masterpiece or that masterpiece. Bob Dylan's written. You know, he writes a song that if it was any other person besides Bob Dylan, this song would be what they're remembered for. But Bob Dylan has done that like 200 times, and that's kind of how Woody Allen is. It's not just that he made Annie Hall or whatever. It's that he's made, you know. Woody Allen's worst movies would be a highlight for most other directors, you know, and he's done it 50 times. So if people try to write him off, it's not, I don't see it as a difference of opinion. I see it as just they don't really know their film history, because it's not, it's like saying Stanley Kubrick is a bad filmmaker or Alfred Hitchcock is a bad filmmaker. You're just revealing that you don't know very much about movies. That, you know, that's what you're doing. So that's my answer to people that say that Woody Allen's movies aren't good.
Rick, we could have talked for many, many more hours, but unlike those Viagra commercials that are in the middle of so many long podcasts, we ain't going to do that. It's not really Viagra. It's like CBD ointments now that you can bathe in or something like that.
You're going to cut in the boner pill ads afterwards, right?
We'll clip it later, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Next week, it will be back to Fantastic Comics Presents, as always, except for this week. See you then, 8 o'clock. Bye.